Okay, perfect.
So
Hello,
before we
guys.
start your presentation, in a few words, can you tell us how it all got started? Where did your interest in the research projects come from?
Yeah, sure. Yes, so when it comes to research, I think this is like something for me natural. I like researching, and this doesn't only mean that I like researching crypto projects, but I also like doing researches with regards to other things like health, also visiting some not typical places in the world and so on. So this is like something in general what I do like what I like doing basically to research, find something, read about something. I know that there are some people who, for example, prefer watching just I don't know, YouTube or some TV series. Like for me, it's not something very, I don't know, interesting. Like I prefer to get some information to increase my knowledge. Everyone has his own preference. Like for me, learning new things, getting some knowledge, fresh knowledge about, for example, crypto projects or about market situation, for example. So things which are relevant to all of us is something especially, appealing and interesting for my, let's say, mind.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, research is very important, especially when it comes to finding new projects and knowing the companies that you work for, invest in, and so on, whether it's individual or organization. Thank you for that and your explanation. I'm glad you're here to give us your presentation. Now, everyone, please keep your microphones muted, or we will have to mute it while Lucas gives his presentation. This will last for about 20 minutes, and then afterwards, if we have some questions prepared from the community, we'll have Lucas answer. And then after that, if we have some time left, any other questions, we'll let the community ask some questions as well, or we'll pick some from the chat.
Okay,
So
perfect.
I guess we can begin. We can start with your presentation.
Okay, sure. I'll share my screen. Just let me know whether you can see. Okay, right now. Can you see my screen or not?
Yes, yes, I can see. It's okay.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, I can
Perfect.
see it.
So I just want to like tell you like a couple of words how the research looks like, what is quite important when researching, and also how is that relevant for GameSwift. Also, I will be mainly focusing on researching regarding games, Web3 games, because like this is our main focus right now with GameSwift. So, for example, when it comes, let's say, to researching DeFi projects, this is like definitely something different. So here I will not be focusing on that, although this is like also something which I'm interested in. But for now, let's keep it more like gaming oriented and pertain to what GameSwift is all about. Yeah, so basically, I would like to start with how basically I do researches, for example, when it comes to Web3 games, because like uh, of course, one of the most important tools for that is just Twitter. So basically, it's important to either follow some relevant Twitter accounts. Let's say, for example, GameSwift. There are like there are like handful of other interesting accounts. Some of them, for example, Vader Research is very interesting when it comes like to analyzing some economic models of games. We all know that there are like problems regarding Web3 gaming and doing some, Ponzi schemes or making game economies unsustainable. So Vader research is pretty straightforward in his research, and thanks to that, you can understand what is, for example, wrong with current state of the market and what we have experienced, for example, with Axie Infinity or Stepan, and thanks to that, you can obviously understand how that was wrong, and that currently we have a lot of nice games developing, which ultimately can have sustainable economies and can also be profitable in the long term, because we all know that in the traditional, it's not a good word, but maybe in a Web2 gaming industry, there are a lot of companies providing huge revenues, gaming companies providing huge revenues for their investors, and also which create like enjoyable games. So this is like the most important factor when it comes to games, to actually create something enjoyable. Yes. So basically, I recommend you following a couple of like to start following some accounts, and once you see that you are getting like interested into it even more, you can start following like basically all many of like currently we are still early in the space. So basically, it's not hard to find valuable content, but it's still like quite scarce, I would say. Yes. So basically, what is also important about Twitter is that you can also use some advanced search, because on Twitter, on the one hand, you can just type in, let's say, Web3 game or NFT or whatever into the search engine, and you can, of course, find some entries, but many of them will be just, spammy entries, and you will have to, filter them out, see what is valuable. So, for example, for me, it's you can like I know that it's quite useful to also use advanced search. So thanks to that, you can skip all of the spam content. You can just filter out by typing in the specific search command. You can skip all of the giveaways, some I don't know Elon Musk's bots, but I think it's they don't exist that much anymore once Elon has already taken over the Twitter. But anyway, we still know that there's a lot of spam on the Twitter anyway. So it's quite useful to do it. You can do it just by clicking on a three dot button near the search engine on Twitter, and you can use advanced search. Other than that, because like Twitter itself is mainly, I would say, for now at least, text platform, let's say, there are still not that many videos, footages. I think that will gradually change, because I've heard some plans that Twitter wants to is inspired, let's say, by TikTok and other platforms which are mainly focusing on video footages. So there will be probably more of it. But currently, let's say YouTube and also Twitch are the main platforms where you can see actual footage of games. So this is like something especially important while researching games, to see how the game looks like, right? So by going watching some YouTube channels, some streamers, like for example Bryson, Spag, or Crypto Stash, you can see what they think about the game, but you can also see how the game looks like. And this is like something very important, to see the quality of the game, because let's be honest, of course, there are many indie games which not necessarily put a strong accent on quality, graphic quality of the game, and still are very, enjoyable to play. But majority, I would say, games are still the best aspect of them is to provide an immersive gameplay, which also has a high quality graphics. So probably by just looking at the footage, you will be also able to spot some high quality titles. Next is Dap Radar. So this is like basically the website which is useful for Web3 games, like not only web games but also other like DeFi protocols, etc., NFT. But for games, it's quite useful because thanks to that radar, you can see how many, like for example, wallets are interacting with the game, how many average users they have over month or day or so. So basically, this is a very important statistic to get some context on how popular the game is and how big the community of that game is. So, so I think it's a great solution, and it's worth to also use it while doing the research. Other than that, we have also some more like DeFi oriented, I would say, tools. So for example, DeFi Llama, we all know that this is like a pretty good solution when spotting, when seeing whether the, for example, chain or protocol is getting attraction. But I think it will be also relevant for Web3 gaming in the upcoming months, because I think that the ultimate future of majority of games will be that they will be using either their own chain, which will be just app chain, it's called. So the chain itself will be built just to support one game. For example, basically Axie Infinity is using its own chain just to support their game. And I think that this will be the case for many big titles, but also they will be using some gaming, let's say, specific chains. So, for example, GameSwift itself will be also one of those chains, which will be oriented just for games, mainly for games. And you will be also able, by searching through DeFi Llama, you will be able to spot whether that chain is gaining some traction, there are more games being built there, or whether there are more users and NFTs being deployed there. So that will be pretty much a useful tool. For now, it's not that much useful because there are not many gaming specific chains available yet, but I think in future this will be relevant. Next tool is Token Terminal. This is also something which might be useful, I think, in future. For now, you can see, for example, on Token Terminal that Axie Infinity is super overvalued, even though it has, I don't know, decreased by, I don't know, 90% from the top over, I think, even 95 even at the bottom. So even though it's still overvalued, so you can see that, for example, on this platform, how much revenue does the game generate? For example, game, like it's mainly about projects which are not games, but still in future, I think there will be more games featured there. So I think it's ultimately very important to also get some context on that. Although I still think that this is not something that we should limit ourselves to, because ultimately many of the game currencies will be using tokens as their game currencies, basically, and they will not necessarily treat it as some kind of revenue generator, but on the other hand, this might bring a lot of utility for the token. So this is also something important, and I think that Token Terminal, as for now, will not be able to spot it like correctly. Another important factor and tool while doing the research is to see the token supply, circulation, how many of the tokens will be released, let's say in the near future, because this is like something especially important while investing on the open market and seeing like whether the tokens itself will at the current price, like what was the price of investors who have invested before the token was listed, and also how many of those tokens will be released over the time, because you don't want to get basically dumped on by some VCs who have bought for example the game token for pennies. So it's better to stay alert, to observe the next unlocks and see how that corresponds to your investing strategy. Yeah, and while doing the research, so basically the first tool, the first step is to find the game, right? By using tools, so for example, Twitter, YouTube, etc. And later on, it's important to keep the track of these games. So this is like, because sometimes you just find a game, but later on you don't keep the track of it and you forget about it. And this is like also something important to, keep yourself organized and to see all of the updates and especially important ones. So basically, important features here and tools are, of course, Twitter notifications. So, for example, when you see when you want to mark some game, let's say as you know that there is some important event happening soon and you want to get informed about it, you can just put some notifications on it. This is like something I think common which people use. But for example, Twitter lists it's are also very useful, and I think this is like something that which is not that much commonly used. So I also encourage you to do it. Basically, you can, for example, here I presented just let's say some kind of list which I have done for myself, and this is like for Web3 games. And not only games, actually, it's also about people who are creating content in the Web3 gaming. And thanks to that, I can keep easily track of such projects. But also, it's possible if you want to, for example, focus on some specific ecosystem, you can just create, let's say, a list of the projects which are building, let's say, on Arbitrum. So I think it's quite important to keep track of everything. Let's say that you want to follow some airdrops and so on. You can also create a separate list for airdrops, and thanks to that, you can keep track of everything, and you can be more like on time with everything. And basically, what is also important here is to also keep yourself like organized with everything. And you can, on the one hand, you can use some kind of bot which will, let's say you're searching through Twitter but you don't have time to spend you don't have enough time, let's say, to do a thorough research on that, but or to read more about something. So you just can use some kind of bot, let's say Twitter bot of remind me of this, which enables you to use that bot, and basically that bot will remind you of some posts, some Twitter, let's say thread, for example, or some event which is specified in this Twitter post, and you can remind yourself about this post later on in a specific timeline. Next thing is also important, quite common, which I use are spreadsheets. So basically, I like to add like different projects to my spreadsheet, to keep some notes of it, have some dates there also presented, and also some links. So whether I need some more information about the project, I can also get back to it. And also calendar. So let's say that there is some kind of event approaching next week. So let's say 3 min, for example, of some nice gaming NFT collection, you can add this event into to your calendar, let's say Google Calendar, and then you can put some notifications on just to not to forget about it. Because like if you think that something is important, it's worth to do it, basically, because if you will not keep the track of everything and you will be just bombarded with all of this information and accounts which you are following, basically, you will not be able to keep the track of everything. So I think it's useful to also focus on this part, basically. Next thing I wanted to just briefly explain and describe how to spot like good projects, because like this is also something important while doing research, that there are a lot of projects, but many of them are actually poor quality. So how to differentiate them? Basically, one of the important things is just to scan, let's say, the community of that project, let's say game. So usually games have their communities on Discord. So you can just by joining the Discord channel, you can see what the vibe is, how people are reacting, whether this is a real community or this is just a community of, I don't know, some hunters, some airdrop hunters, or some spammers or scammers. So I think it's pretty easy to spot that on Discord. So I think it's worth to do it. Another thing, how to differentiate good projects. Usually good projects have good investors, so you can also search for information regarding their investors. So there is especially a good website about which covers this is Crunchbase. So thanks to that, you can get an insight what specific investors are on the cap table of that project and at what, for example, valuation they have entered. So I think this is the best tool for that. But on the other hand, there are also some other ones appearing. There's PitchBook, and there's also like Google, basically, where you can type in the project and it's, let's say, funding grant, and you will get probably some information about it. Another thing which also helps you in spotting like top projects is just, like on the one hand, you could use some, let's say, stream of YouTube or Twitch, but you can also just try it on yourself by playing some demo version, alpha release. And by doing so, you can easily on yourself test whether this is like something catching and which probably could have some great potential also from the, let's say, investment side and also from the gaming side. So this is like what is also worth doing. And also what is also worth mentioning here that there are some key differentiators. Like I know it's a little bit maybe easy to say that there are some specific phrases which differentiate good projects from bad projects, but there are some, let's say, red flags which could help you filter out some bad projects. So basically, one of them is to claim that the game is currently like play to earn. So let's say with the current market situation and all of the experiences we've had with some unsustainable models for games, we all know that play to earn model is basically bad, and probably investing in such games is not a good idea. Another thing is that there are some games which try to aggressively market themselves as being, let's say, partnered with, let's say, Amazon. On the other hand, they just pay for various services. So, for example, they pay for Amazon Web Services, which provide them with some data transfer. And this is like something common for many of the games, maybe majority of them. And on their website, you can see that, let's say, they are partnered with Amazon. So this is like something which also poses a little bit for me to be a red flag. I know that many of games are trying like the best at marketing, but I think this is like something which is actually counterproductive. Another thing is there are a lot of games which, let's say, are projects which use some kind of a lot of hashtags, for example. So this is like something that also scares me off. So I don't recommend to do it. I know that usually good games have like good marketing departments and they know how to write like clean posts and how to communicate with the community. So I think this is like also something which helps you in differentiating such projects. Another problem with a lot of Web3 games is that they're saying more about blockchain and NFT than about games, and this is like game itself. Yeah, so this is also something important, that ultimately the game itself is the most important product, and whether it's on blockchain and it uses NFTs, this is not a major, this shouldn't be a major unique selling point of that game. So the enjoyable gaming gameplay is the most important factor, and this is what the game should and creators should be focused on. Okay, so now let's move on just to risks, which are connected basically with doing the research. So one of them is that some people, let's say, especially games right now, they rely on their own, let's say, launchers or their own websites, which enable users to connect their wallets to these games just by going to their website. And this is like something which is not good. And I think that's why, for example, games with this, because we believe that using, a launcher solution which enables users to launch just a verified game and to aggregate all of these games in one place is something more convenient. And thanks to that, you will be ensured that you are launching a legit version of the game, because we don't want to, lose our money by connecting wallets to, let's say, some games which turn out to be, let's say, a not legit version of these games. So this is like something which poses which is a risk factor, which also you need to take into account while doing the research. Another thing is that when you are like early, usually there's like, let's say, a potential, let's say, to participate in some airdrop or some private public sale, something like that. And this might be a good investment opportunity for you, but this also creates some risks that you might be scammed basically by some bad actors who are just pretending to be a legit, let's say, token distributor or distributors or someone like that. Another thing is also, so basically using also unverified launchers. So this is like also what I have covered. Also, it's important to be aware while opening files, downloading games, because they can infect your computer. I know some case of a guy who just opened some exe file, executive file, and it turned out that it has drained his wallet to zero, basically. So you can also just be sure that you are not, because like while doing research, we also want to, let's say, try some game out, but it might be also something posing risk to our money. Yeah. Yeah, so basically, just to wrap it up, I just want to tell you what we are currently focusing on with GameSwift and our researches and our partnerships. So basically, we are now focusing on platform and launcher game integrations. So as you probably know, our platform and launcher are chain agnostic, so we are open for integration with the games, no matter the chain games are built on. And also what we do currently focus on are PC desktop games. So these are games especially suitable for a launcher, because as for now, we are mainly focusing on PC games, just like similarly to Steam. But later on, we will also move on to more like mobile games, because as probably you know, we have recently announced our partnership with Polygon on building our own dApp store using their DSK tool. And basically, this is maybe not to compete with Google Play or Apple App Store, just to create another opportunity for mobile game creators to have some another option to distribute their games buy, and basically also use some cheaper solutions, because we all know that Apple and Google, they charge a lot. So we can also get some traction in that field, and I think this is like something which will be also a good opportunity in the Web3 space. And also what we are focusing now, especially on the games which are playable. So majority of good games still don't have like full versions ready, because we all know that the Web3 gaming space is pretty young. But yet they start to deploy some early access games, and this is like pretty in line with the strategy of building Web3 game, which is like by taking feedback from community. And this is like, for example, what Star Heroes is doing right now. We're in alpha phase. There are a lot of testers from our community providing feedback, and I think that this game is getting more and more, quality thanks to them. So this is the right thing to do, and this is also what we want to, which games we especially want to integrate with, especially with games which have some playable versions, so we can also show you, our community, that you can start playing games basically by using GameSwift. Yes, and this is like the last thing which could be helpful for your research. This is a list of 700 games over which are being built in the Web3 space. So you can see that there are a lot of them, not necessarily only Pansy schemes. There are a lot of high quality games which have good developers, which have solid funding, and which start to get some traction, to get some community. This is like pretty early, but by being early, I believe that ultimately this will create a lot of good, lucrative opportunities for all of us. Okay, so I think this is all. Thank you guys, and happy to hear your thoughts.
Great. Thank you very much for your presentation. For now, we're going to actually move on to the questions collected from our forum. I guess we'll start with the first one from Bartola. So the question is, so entering a project at the stage that no one has heard of is extremely risky for users, but VCs do it and earn well from it. They are certainly wrong at times too, but less frequently. What do they know that we don't know? Or is it just a matter of a scam not going to VC for money, so they don't invest in it? They don't invest because they don't know about it?
Yes, so this is like a quite important question. Yes, so basically what VCs know that we don't know? Basically, I believe that majority, like, first of all, it's not that easy to, to be connected with a good VC, especially. So usually, you just don't, let's say, write email to them, or to their Twitter account, and they will just, I don't know, get in contact with you and invest in, let's say, your project or game. So usually, it's important to have some connections in the industry, either gaming industry, either blockchain industry, and thanks to that, you can start a conversation, basically. Although it's still possible, it's not that only people with connections can get some good VCs on board, but this is one of the factors which matter, I would say. So this is the first thing. Another thing is that they do due diligence. So basically, important factors. So one of them is basically they want to know more about the team. So they want to scan your team, the team of the project, whether there was like some relevant experience of team members. They also want to know about the game itself. So whether it's pretty much dependent on the strategy of the VC, because some VCs invest in some early stages, so there's usually no product, and this is like especially the most risky investment part. But there are some VCs which invest later on. So basically, when there is no product, I believe they mainly focus on the team, and also, of course, on the vision of the product itself. But still, it is the most important factor, I would say. So they do due diligence. They want to know more about your experience, about, like in Web3 gaming. They also take a look at community, whether it's starting to get some traction and so on. So this is another important factor, but usually, let's say in a traditional gaming, they mainly focus, let's say, on a team, and this is like, yeah, the most important factor.
Great. I think you covered that question. We can move to the next one from Montresor. How do you choose projects to research? Rankings, degen wallets, trends, or something else?
Projects, how do I choose? Yeah, so basically right now I'm mainly focusing, let's say, on games, and especially games which are not, let's say, available yet, with no tokens available yet. So I usually just see, like, I want to take a look, for example, at investors, for example. I want to take a look, as already mentioned, on community, and this is like mainly what I'm focusing on when and also whether there's like some playable version of the game, and whether there are some footages available. So thanks to that, I can get more insight on that. When it comes to projects, let's say some other projects than games, or yes, so this is like something probably useful to spot some wallets, some whether see whether they have some successful trades. Yeah, so this is like one of the things I sometimes do, but this is not relevant to doing my research on games. But yeah, this is like mainly for, let's say, investment purposes. Another thing is basically, as already mentioned, some token terminal. Well, it's especially useful for DeFi projects to see whether they have some revenue model. So I think now, especially in the more, like, currently, let's say the market is improving last weeks, but in general, I would say that it's better to focus on the projects which generate some revenue, or create some use cases, get some nice traction. I know there are some narratives and trends, let's say AI right now, and this is like something that it's useful, like to do some, let's say, trade, but it's more like speculation, I believe. And ultimate, like, for example, this AI trend, I believe that this is like, for example, for me, this is like what started for me in 2018, because at that time I was like also a little bit younger, and also not experienced that much in the crypto space. And I also was very inspired by, let's say, AI, and that creates a lot of, nice opportunities in future, and that the world itself will be governed, let's say, by AI, and that we people ultimately majority of us will be, useless. But and so yeah, for me that was, oh, it's a great investment opportunity. But later on, and I bought a lot of AI tokens at that time, and majority of them went to zero, maybe apart from Singularity, which is now pumping right now. Yes, so this is like something that you need to take into account, that such narratives, especially those which do not are not combined with some working revenues models, which are only based on trades. This is like speculation. Of course, you can earn a lot of money on it, but I wouldn't like hold for the long time to these tokens. I wouldn't marry these tokens, because I believe that still, although AI, in comparison to what was, let's say, in 2018, is something different. Right now, we have some working major products like ChatGPT, for example. This is like still pretty early, and when it comes to blockchain and AI, I think it's even way more early, and I'm not sure like whether it will be something sustainable like in the upcoming even years, I would say.
That's great. Let's move on to the next question. How to calculate estimate token inflation during the lifetime of the project?
Yeah, so this is like something also important. Like basically, I believe like one of the best tools is which I have covered already. So this is like token unlocks. So on a token unlocks, you can see for example whether the token itself is being released. For example, let's say that there is like daily vesting, so you can see, for example, that on for example, token unlock, you can see that Moonbeam, one of the major Polkadot parachains, they have like over 100k tokens being released per day. So this is like, let's say, a huge circulation being added daily. But there are also tokens, a majority of them, let's say, which are based on, let's say, some either quarterly, either monthly releases, and you can spot that time. So basically, there are a lot of people who, for example, short the tokens, which will have some huge releases in the, let's say, upcoming time. But this is like something very risky because sometimes there are big players who are playing against you. Everyone knows that there will be a lot of tokens released, so they start by, let's say, liquidating all of these short sellers before. So this is like a risky strategy, but this is like something that is very helpful while, for example, holding the token and to get some more insight about how many tokens are released, whether this is like something healthy, and whether your price is something, let's say, good and attractive in comparison what other, for example, investors have entered on.
That's great. Yeah, you already covered some of this earlier. So let's go to the next question. Do you also investigate gamer communities? If so, how?
Yeah, so as for now, it's mainly Discord, also Twitter. I think it's still useful to see whether the project itself doesn't have some just bot accounts and some just purchased people and bots who will be just retweeting or liking your post. So it's pretty easy to see and spot whether this is something organic, whether, for example, there are some projects which are, let's say I spot the project and I see that it is not followed by anyone from the people I follow, and I follow like a couple of thousand people. But anyway, it has like 100,000 followers. So I think it's definitely majority of them are bots. So this is also something that you need to take into account. While gamer community, I think it's mainly like purely like gamer community. This is like something which is on Discord. So you need to just to immerse yourself in a Discord channel and see whether this is like some proper organic gaming community, whether they talk about game itself or whether they want only speculate about some giveaways or something like that.
That makes a lot of sense. Could you share some of your insights obtained from some of the promising blockchain and game studios are?
Yes, definitely. So I can, of course, apart from, let's say, games with Star Heroes, Star Studio, which is creating Star Heroes, I don't want to only shell our products. So basically, other promising, let's say, blockchains, for example, gaming blockchains are, for example, for me, I think Oasis Games has some great potential because like this is like especially like Asia centered, let's say, community, and also developers are mainly like, let's say, from Asia, Japan, Korea, but we need to also take into account that these are the basically one of the best markets for games, because like there are a lot of gamers in Korea, in Japan, and they are also very active, and they also leave a lot of money in the games. So these are basically gamers that games want to have, because thanks to them they can generate a lot of revenue. So for example, I think that Oasis Games it might be a great contender when it comes like to blockchain gaming blockchain space, because they are creating technology for games, also for the games which will be, for example, creating and setting up their own, let's say, side chains, and this is like a great like what is very important about Oasis Games, that they have captured like a lot of acquired a lot of good partners as their network validators. So one of them, let's say, is Bandai Namco, which is one of the major Japanese gaming studio. There's also Ubisoft, which is actually a European French gaming studio, but we all know that they are like very big, and they have like developed a lot of great games, let's say Assassin's Creed, for example. And there's, for example, also Sega, which is also one of the major Japanese studios. So basically, I think Oasis Games will be one of the major gaming blockchains. Another one is, obviously, you probably know it, it's Polygon, and all of the Polygon ecosystem. So I think this will be also something. Some of the major gaming blockchains. Another one is probably also Immutable X. They are also, for now, it's mainly limited. Let's say I would say it's mainly like focused on NFTs, NFT marketplace, but later on they will probably try to scale it up using Starknet, and also try also expand in being like more functional when it comes like to providing infrastructure for games. Yeah, game studios are so, as I already mentioned, like there are like a couple of big, for example, Asian studios which already have good traction, and they have built like great games. So for example, let's say there is like we made and we mix. So this is like a Korean game studio and also platform, and they have like a lot of like especially mobile games, but also not only, which are very popular. This is like also, for now, it's quite limited when it comes like to the let's say blockchain functionality. But I think like, for example, for me, when I see game studios, I believe that, for example, Asia, as I already mentioned, is now the most, I would say, bullish, let's say, on Web3 gaming, and they see a potential in it. In Europe and in the United States, there are a lot of reluctant game studios towards it. Anyway, there are still like there are a couple of major games being developed. So you probably all know Illuvium, you probably all know Shrapnel, for example. So these are big time, these are very big titles which are now developed. And we at Web3 space, we are just waiting for, I believe, for the major blockbuster, which will finally convert, maybe not convert, but bring millions of gamers into the space. So this is like basically what also we want to with games with facilitate. Yeah.
All right, next question. How do you determine the potential of service offerings that GameSwift could provide?
Yeah, so I think like we have like a great potential when it comes like, especially when it comes to providing like infrastructure, because like I believe like currently, like probably you all know about it, but there are like a lot of games which are not which have some which have like Web3 functionalities, but ultimately they are like create a lot of barriers for Web2 gamers to enter. So basically, by using games, you will be able to easily acquire these gamers, especially Web2 gamers, which are not necessarily focused, on self-ownership of on self-custody. These are some things which are not that much important, especially to people who want to just focus on playing games. So later on, maybe they will, get more informed and acquainted with all of the benefits connected with Web3 gaming and self-custody, but this is not something very important for majority of the games, gamers, Web2 gamers especially. And this is like the major thing that like we understand. And basically, thanks to that, we believe that our solutions, our services can be very useful both to gamers and both to developers. So I think there's like a great potential, and all of these solutions are basically provide end-to-end process. So this is like something important to have just one place where you can launch the game, you can interact with gamers, you can also trade your items, assets. So this is like and trade it in a more decentralized way, in a way which is like a more like I would say less reliant, like for example, let's say on Steam, this is like trading is very limited, let's say. In games with we can stand out that once, let's say, you buy a game asset, you can also cash out from it. Not necessarily you need to stay in the whole ecosystem and buy another asset like on Steam. So basically, I believe like this is like something different in the Web3 gaming, and this is also something important that ultimately will be a key also differentiator between like Web2 gaming and platforms like Steam, and let's say Web3 gaming and GameSwift.
That's great. So we have a few minutes left. We can see if we have a question or two we can answer from our community in the chat, actually. Let's see what we have here. Here's one. If you spot a project that has good fundamentals and a super social hype and is starting to be created around it, but it has a poor tokenomics, I guess poor tokenomics, what would you do? Would you jump in?
Yeah, so one of the projects I think which might be connected with that is Gala Games, for example. I believe that Gala Games is doing quite good job when it comes like to games, to building also platform for games, but it's a little bit built in a different way with, for example, of what GameStop does. I still think that they at least build some enjoyable games, and this is like something which makes them stand out from the rest. But on the other hand, they have like not the best tokenomics model. You probably could know that their token was one of the most shorted tokens in the last months, and ultimately it turned out that it has also bounced a lot thanks to all of these short sellers finally closing their positions once they saw that the market conditions are improving. But yes, this is a problem. Like, yeah. So when it comes like to whether it's worth buying such a token, I'm not sure. I'm not sure anyway, because this is like still risky, when you see, for example, that the inflation of the token is very harsh, and on the other hand, that they're bringing like nice titles to their platform, that it still might be risky. So it's worth to evaluate to see whether this valuation, for example, of the project itself is still reasonable when it is, because you need to take a look for ultimately you need to take a look at the fully diluted valuation and see whether it's reasonable, let's say, in comparison to web to companies, for example. We probably all know that these valuations in a Web3 space are way inflated in comparison to Web2 space, but still you can get some more insight on that. So yeah, so I think it's still worth to like probably there will be a lot of great games with some broken tokenomics, and this will be the problem for of the upcoming years. But ultimately, probably majority of the good games will also have some real revenues being generated, and this will also be reflected in the token performance.
What about on the flip side? What if they have great fundamentals in tokenomics, but they're inactive on their social medias? Is it worth considering to invest in such a project? Or this can be kind of a sign that we are early? Or do you know of any projects that have been silent and had great success?
Maybe this is not something that I can answer right away, but probably there are some projects like that. Yes, so this is like something like I think like usually like there are some projects definitely which don't have like the best, let's say, marketing teams and but at least they have usually some good product, right? So you can at least evaluate the product itself and see how that corresponds also to token to valuation. Yes, so that would be like something useful, but yes, so probably like marketing is something very important in the our Web3 space, and this is like something which probably also inflates all of these valuations of the Web3 projects. So you need to take that into account. That ultimately, all of like let's currently we see a lot of hype, let's say, with AI. I'm just coming back to this topic but you need to be informed and to take that into consideration that crypto currently is a lot of about hype. So if you want to, let's say, get some profits, take some profits and generate some profits, basically, you need to take into account that marketing side of things is very important in that space, which is like pretty much still, I would say, permissionless and easily accessible for people from different regions and countries in the world.
That's great. Let's try one more question. What do you think about Avalanche and their partnership with Amazon Games? Is that worth looking into?
Yeah, yes. Also, I did mention Avalanche. Yes, I also think that Avalanche is one of the most promising blockchains when it comes to games. They are also building a similar infrastructure to Polygon. Also, they are building subnets, and this is like I believe like this is a killer feature when it comes like to games, because games need some proper scalability, and majority of the chains will be not able to handle all of the transactions on their mainnets. So and yes, so currently we have like let's be honest, currently we don't have like many quality projects available yet in the space. I mean games, and still 50% of all of the blockchain transactions are gaming transactions. So it's still so you can get some context on that there's like a lot of potential in games, in the gaming transactions, and this will be like ultimately I believe like this will be the most important field for blockchain networks, because I think like the most important thing for them is to generate a lot of transactions, to get a lot of fees for various stakers. And how they can do it? They can do it just by providing stream of new games and gamers entering the blockchain. So yeah, I think like Avalanche is also one of the major players in the space, and their partnership with Amazon Games also might bring a lot of traction.
That's great. I guess that's all we have time for today, Lucas. Thank you very much for your presentation, answering all our questions for our community, and having this AMA today. Maybe we
Yeah,
can
thank
have
you guys.
another one in the future with you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah,
Uh,
I really enjoyed the presentation. A lot of tips for me and a lot of work you did. We have a lot of questions still on the chat, and my idea is to maybe we can move the discussion. We can collect all the questions from the chat with a moderator team, and we can move the discussion to the new channel research, in which you are some kind of ambassador. What do you think?
Yeah, sure. Let's so please guys join our research and shill channel, participate actively, and we can continue our conversation there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and thank you to all the community for coming as well. And we encourage you to do all your own analysis and research on any projects that you spot. And please post them in our research and shill channel. And we will be reviewing and looking at them. And it's possible we will reward the best research as well.
Yeah, sure. And also we can encourage you to maybe to make a research together. If you spot some nice project, we can make research and ask the question you have. So Lucas is watching the channel also, and we'll ask him to be active with us there. So let's go.
Thank you everyone for coming. This will conclude our AMA for today.
Thank you.
See you all
Goodbye.
later. Bye bye.